So, Nikki Brennan, listen, your name is well synonymous with the world of GAA, of course, 35th president of the GAA nationally. I'm mindful, that your name is obviously very well known in local circles down through the years, and anything to do with the world of sport, Nikki Brennan is thrown into it. How does it feel, this whole initiative is about kind of Kilkenny and setting Kilkenny apart and having that sense of pride of wearing the jersey in all different formats. How does it feel to be kind of the president of a national, well-known, well-established and well-respected association and have that Kilkenny blood running through you, and to be at a national level as a Kilkenny person?
Well, first of all, it was a great honour, Edward. Nice to be talking to you, I should say, at the outset. A huge honour. I mean, this was in 2005, was the day I was actually elected. Ironically, it was the same day that the GAA decided to open Croke Park. That's, in other words, relax Rule 42. Viewers will understand what that is. So, as a Kilkenny person, you felt honoured to be elected just the 35th president in all of the GAA's history back at that particular stage. Something I never dreamt at all. I come from a small country junior club, and maybe you don't expect people at that level to that club to kind of reach up to the levels I did. So, but when I was elected, I suppose there was a number of things. There's your family. Of course, there's the place where you come from. There is Connaughey Parish. There is Kilkenny, because clearly I've been an officer in Kilkenny, I'd heard with Kilkenny. And I would have to say there was also great pride with the fact that I worked with Glanbia. I was there, I joined Glanbia in 1971 and worked there all my life, the only place I ever worked. So there was pride in Glanbia as well from everybody there. So there was a great sense of being from Kilkenny. You were very well known around the country, and you brought Kilkenny kind of with you. People would ask you about Kilkenny, and people might come to Kilkenny because you talked about the ambience of the city, the way the city was laid out, the hospitality, the welcome people would get. So I would have always seen it as an opportunity to kind of promote Kilkenny. And I would still do, in fairness, when I would meet people, they might ask you about Kilkenny and what's happening there. And you talk about the many festivals and events. While sport maybe brought me to the fore in that sense, there is a wider picture, and I think we all have to be a sense of an ambassador at any opportunity we can get.
And Kilkenny, of course, being so successful at the time, I'm sure, was no burden to a man in the top position.
Well, I was very fortunate in the sense that in my 3 years as president, Kilkenny won the All-Ireland the 3 years. Early in my presidency, I attended the funeral of a former GAA president, Con Murphy, in Cork. And Con was the only previous president who had handed the cup over to his own county 3 years in a row during his presidency. And I was doing the oration at his grave, the funeral, and I jokingly said, because it was a celebration of a great life,
of course,
I jokingly said, now I'd like to emulate what Con Murphy has done. And little did I think that would be the case. So when Kilkenny are so successful, and our colours are very distinct in Irish sport as well, and I suppose the manner in which Kilkenny have been successful, it does help to portray the county and the whole character of the county, its people, and the infrastructure of the county, and particularly here in the city as well. That's very important.
Nikki, I'm always conscious of people when they kind of go to positions at national level, whether it's a president or a chairperson or a CEO of a voluntary organisation of this sort. Talk to me then, after your tenure is over, how do you kind of come back down to normality and be back on the kind of the streets of Kilkenny or out in Jenkinstown without that sense of prestige maybe that a role of that type would have held?
I think that's a very good question, because you're going during the 3 years of the presidency, it's all go. You're 16 hours a day at least, and maybe more, flat out at attending events, functions, and not just in Ireland, by the way. I travelled all over the world in terms of meeting GAA people in numerous areas for fundraising, setting up new GAA units. And clearly when that's all over, I mean, I had intended, it was always my intention to go back to work in Glanbia, which I did, and I'm fairly good at just switching off and moving on to the next phase. And that's what I done. I went back and I got stuck into the work in Glanbia. I still had some involvement in the GAA. You stay on the GAA's main management commission for the year after you're president. But I had some roles there. And subsequent to that, various people in Croke Park asked me to get involved in leading a number of initiatives and a number of projects. So I was very involved, and literally have been involved up to the last couple of months. I've pulled away now at this stage. So you're active enough, but you have to be able to stand back and let the new people who've taken over, let them run the show, because it's their scene now, and it's up to them to get on with it and not have interference from the former president.
Absolutely, let everyone have their day. Yeah. Nikki, you're born, bred and buttered Kilkenny and very well established and known as such. Maybe tell us a little bit about your home situation, firstly, kind of pre and post marriage, and also maybe tell us about coming of age in Kilkenny. Tell us about being that kind of young fella, young adult in Kilkenny, as you said you were playing with Kilkenny as well. Tell us about how life was for you in terms of your experience of being a Kilkenny person.
Well, my home place where I was born, there was 9 of us in the family. It was a relatively small farm. But my father and mother came from adjoining parishes. My father from Ballyfine, my mother from Three Castles, and they settled in their uncle's place there. And as I said, a family of 9. So it was a busy house, and we were all made to work at an early stage out on the farm. It was maybe tough going at the time, but all good rearing. We all got well educated and went different ways. Although all bar my sister Kathleen, who is married and living in Hamburg in Germany for a large number of years, are all here in Ireland and relatively close to Kilkenny, in Kilkenny or in the borders area of Kilkenny. So it was went to the local primary school, and then I headed into St. Kieran's. That was a big ordeal because in 1966, going to a boarding school my first time from home, it was a strange environment and a chastising environment, I must say as well. You know, it was a lot of discipline was strong there. So you had to adjust, and it formed you into the individual you are, to be honest about it, because life was different. I was a full-time boarder in there, even though I was only 6 miles out the road. Yeah. And that was, but I got used to it, got involved in a lot of activities in there, sport, chief among them, of course, and my hurling definitely improved by going to St. Kieran's, and that was a great experience. One of my brothers is at home on the farm, and my Kieran is recently retired last year as Deputy Chief of Staff of the Army. Garrod runs the Brookhaven Nursing Home Group. Canis, actually now a former Army person, as is Garrod, works for him. My sister Kathleen in Germany. Bernadette is Chief Nursing Officer, the manager in the Brookhaven Nursing Home area. Marion works in that place as well, and Bridget is a retired psychiatric nurse. So I hope I haven't left anything out there.
I'm just thinking all good solid Irish names there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, we were I suppose a typical Irish country family at the time. We all had to knuckle down and do our bit and keep the show on the road, and because we're well aware that our parents, like many parents of their time, made enormous sacrifices for us in terms of the way we were looked after, our education, and I'd like to think the people we are today are the people that our parents wished we would be.
Nikki, as I said, with GAA and COVID-19 has caused such, ramifications for so many clubs and societies and families and groups and businesses at large. With regard to the kind of the GAA, maybe if you kind of keep it more locally to Kilkenny, how sympathetic was the kind of the COVID regulations to allowing the kind of the Kilkenny GAA to pursue its activities in terms of championships and club championships, etc., and how was that able to be managed?
Well, I think first of all, local GAA clubs, among other clubs, were fantastic in helping people who had COVID, to support people who were in isolated areas and that, to help them. When the word came through that there was going to be some activity, we weren't sure what was going to happen, but then the government and NEFIT allowed activities to resume. There was a condensed championship, I suppose, put together, and it went remarkably well. I think Kilkenny had no difficulties. I'm not sure if there was any games called off because of incidents of COVID or suspected COVID. So it went off extremely well, and the championships are now completed at this stage. And so it's really remarkable. There are some other secondary competitions still to be played. So there was a lot of activity considering the times we were in. So I think the local Kilkenny GAA deserve an awful lot of credit. And it must be said that some of the bigger games were held in Nolan Park. And I suppose in many respects, going in to watch games in Nolan Park, right beside, now there weren't any testing taking place during the matches, but the centre in Nolan Park was where most of the testing was being done for the Kilkenny and the wider geographic area around Kilkenny and the surrounding counties. And I suppose it was a reminder as you walked into Nolan Park, or anyone who was passing by Nolan Park, that there was a real serious issue here taking place where people's health was at stake with the COVID testing centre. But overall the GAA done a remarkable job, and I suppose we now, as most of the main competitions are concluded, we now look forward in anticipation to what the inter-county scene will bring, which starts up at the end of October. People are waiting, hoping, because if the games go ahead as planned, they'll get a lot of airtime on TV, and the government were always keen that the competitions would go ahead because they felt that the people of the country just needed sporting activities to keep their minds occupied and keep those who are isolated in particular, give them something to kind of pep them up for up to until Christmas.
Absolutely, a bit of stimulation. Nikki, a couple of final questions that I have for you. In terms of yourself now, if you were to look at a nice day off or a nice day out in Kilkenny, you know that famous question, what makes Nikki Brennan tick? What do you like to do in Kilkenny, either city or county? Way do you like to spend your time in it?
Well, I suppose I know that you're very much into the whole theatre side of things. I like the Watergate. I like going to shows in the Watergate. My wife
going to see your family in it, of course.
Well, there's a bit of that as well, of course. But my wife is very much into dramatics and likes all that sort of stuff. And I certainly do as well. I suppose I'm involved a bit in, obviously you're aware, I'm involved in community radio. That means meeting people, chatting to people out and about, and not just about sport, it's about people, their lives and their life experiences and things like that. So it's nice to come into the city. I'm not calling myself a great shopper or anything like that, but I am very conscious, and I would be an avid fighter for the whole retailers of Kilkenny to make sure that we do support locally. It's very easy to pick up your computer and buy something from Amazon, and yes, you might get it 10% cheaper, but I mean, you've got to remember that in Kilkenny we have an awful lot of people employed, and it's up to us all to keep it going. So I would be very much conscious of that when I'm in Kilkenny, that you'd be using the restaurants or the retail outlets or whatever it might be to procure your services, whatever it might be, or procure goods. So, but Kilkenny certainly it just has grown so much over the years, and I mean I can remember it so well from the earliest stage of when my father would bring me into the Monster House maybe to see Santa Claus at Christmas, going to my first picture ever in the Savoy Theatre, which you know now is the Watergate. Things like that. I've seen the way the city has developed, a lot down to the great planning and the leadership shown by people who have ran this city over many years. And I know we still have our challenges about many sorts of things, particularly around the retailing, particularly around the whole traffic management, things like that. But over the years since I left the GA presidency, it's worth noting that I chaired the Kilkenny older people's, the Kilkenny senior citizens and all of that age-friendly county. And we've done a lot of work with the local authority to improve the ambience of the city, improve areas for walking and for seating and all of that. And I see that out there now, and Kilkenny is a city, as I get older myself, I see Kilkenny is a city that cares about older people. And we must continue to do that and continue to enhance our city. And I think Kilkenny, I'm very confident about Kilkenny, but we should still keep our eye on the ball, because there's plenty of challenges out there over the years, be it COVID related or other types of related. We need this city to continue to be vibrant, because it's where we all grew up, and as they say, we're only out the road.
Absolutely. Nikki, finally, what makes you proud to be from Kilkenny? What is it that makes that heart swell with pride?
I suppose it's a sense of place, in the sense that I suppose the proudest place is your own parish. You grow up there, you go to school there, you play sports with them there. Then you move on to the inter-county stage, if you're fortunate enough as I was, and you play at the highest level. You represented Kilkenny at the highest level. You become a person like a GA president, and people know you're from Kilkenny. They talk about Kilkenny, be it in Ireland or if you're abroad someplace. So I think you wear the black and amber as a badge of honour, to be honest about it. And I'm no different than people from other counties who have that sense of pride in their place. And when you see things happening in Kilkenny, it does make you feel good, and you hope that people will continue to enhance the city and enhance the county. And while it may be difficult now, but I think that's important as well, because we need to get the younger people to have a sense of, loving their place where they're from and wanting to invest their time and their efforts to improving it, be it environmental or whatever it might be. We must always do that, because the absolute mantra of the Kilkenny Age Friendly, and I would finish on this, was that we want to make Kilkenny a great place in which to grow old. And I think that should be what every citizen of Kilkenny should continue to do. Continue to make Kilkenny a great place in which to grow old, and we can all be happy in it, in whatever our younger days, but also in our older days.
Absolutely. Nikki Brennan, there we must leave it, but thank you for making yourself available today, just to give us that tiny glimmer of insight into who Nikki Brennan is, and that sense of pride and that sense of place very much to the fore. And of course, as always, for your generosity of spirit and time and availability for all things Kilkenny. And that in itself, I suppose, while you could talk about a sense of pride and a sense of commitment, it's the kind of the demonstrative facts of these things that make it all very much evident in your action. So thank you and good morning.
You're very welcome.